Hello again, it's Tuppence. I've got myself a new mould. This seaside themed mould has got corals and plants and seashells, and I've already been playing with it, which is why it's dirty, but it's translucent and it's lovely thick silicone, so it's perfect for epoxy resin and UV resin too. And I've also bought myself some of the chrome powders. These are the Let's Resin chrome powders and they are gorgeous. I've seen other people using them and I couldn't wait to try them myself. If you're a beginner in UV resin, this is the perfect thing for you to try. I've made sure that my window is shaded and I'm going to be using Let's Resin's UV resin. I'm going to put a small amount into the bottom of my cup. I'm not worried about those bubbles because I am going to add some alcohol ink. I'm going to be using the Sigwong white alcohol ink. I'm going to give it a good shake before I use it, and I only want to put a few drops in there, just one or two. I've mixed it up until it's all one colour, and you can still see through it. It's a milky white colour, but it's translucent, and that's going to allow the UV rays to go through it. Here's the mica colours that I'm going to use. I'm using the rose red chrome, blue chrome, and the holographic silver. So only 3 colours, but that's going to give me some amazing effects. These are stunning colours. And I really only need a tiny amount. In fact, so little that I'm actually going to use what's in the lid. So I'm picking a tiny bit up on a makeup brush. This brush came in the kit. And then I'm flicking it against the side of the lid. And that's putting some specks into the mould cavity that I want to use. I'll do the same for this. It's kind of an ammonite type shell up the top here. I've got a big blob there. I'm not worried about that. That's fine. So I just want to get a few random specks in there. Okay, I think that's enough of that colour. So now I'm going to move on to the next colour, and I think this is going to be the rose red. I really love this. I'm just going to tip it up so I get some on the lid. You can see I've got plenty there. And exactly the same process. I will pick a little bit up on my brush and then just flick it against the edge of the lid, and that will scatter some of the mica into the bottom of the mould. So I'm cleaning my brush off by rubbing it against the back of my glove, and now I can use this blue. And I think I've mastered this technique now because it's exactly the same. I just flick. And it couldn't be any more simple really, and you're using very little mica, although that looks like a lot, but most of it is on the edge of my mould. Again, clean it off on my glove and then burnish this in, which just means give it a good rub with your brush and polish all of the colours together, and you can see the iridescence that we're getting. It does look like the mother of pearl effect you get on shells. Beautiful. Now I can add the UV resin that I've mixed up. It's important that UV resin is cured properly, and to do that you need to let the UV rays get through all of the layers. So I am going to build this a little bit at a time. These moulds aren't terribly deep, but you don't want to fill it so much that the UV resin can't cure all the way through. So I'm just picking some up using my stick and then dropping it in. And I'm going to gently move it around, but I don't want to scratch the bottom of my mould or remove any of that mica that I've put there. There is quite a lot of texture in the bottom of the mould and I don't want any bubbles to get trapped there, so I can gently push this resin around to cover all of the areas and make sure that there aren't any bubbles stuck underneath. So when this is halfway full, I'm going to cure this underneath a UV resin lamp. I'll put the lamp over the top and I'm going to put this on for 90 seconds. That's all done, and I'm going to give it a cure from the bottom as well. So I'm just going to rest my mould on the top and then I can press the button, but be careful not to look into the lights. I'm going to add a little bit more sparkle now. I've got this holographic chunky glitter. This is the Opal version. You can get lots of different colours. And I've put some into that white resin that I mixed up, the same one that I used on layer 1. I'm going to spoon that onto the back, or drop it onto the back, and smooth that out so that I can see some of those flakes. And because that first layer is so translucent, we should be able to see some of the flakes within the resin when the sun catches it, I hope. And I want some glitter in this one, so I'm going to put some in here. And I might have enough here to actually fill this one up. So I haven't got very much left, and I don't think I'm going to have enough to completely fill up this one, but that's okay. I can add a layer of clear glitter on the back. So I'm going to cure this again now, and I'm going to add a layer of clear resin just to top this up and bring this level with the edge of the mould. So I'll cure that again, and now they're ready for demold. So I'm going to start with this one. It's pretty subtle, but I'm sure you can see the multiple colours and the iridescence. The holographic silver is amazing. It really does give a kind of glittery, glistening shine. So I'm just using some scissors to trim off any of the overspill while it's still nice and soft. That piece is meant to be there. Just look at that colour range. And in the sunshine, you can see some of those glitter flakes. So hopefully I'll get better pictures of that later. Let's try this one. It's so pretty. It is pretty subtle, but it is pretty. Again, I'm just going to snip some of the extra off, and I can just about see those glitter flakes through the edge where the scissors are. As I say, they do show up much better in real life than they do on camera, so hopefully the photographs at the end will show it a little bit better. I think it's gorgeous. It really isn't doing it justice, this camera. So I need to finish this off, turn it into a pendant or something, but before I do, and because it's highly addictive, I'm going to have another go. So this time I'm going to dab the mica into the cavities instead of flicking it. I can be a little bit more specific about my placement and which colours I want where. So I started with the rose red. I'm going to make sure I clean off my brush on my glove, and I moved to the gold, and I have put quite a lot of gold in there, and then I tried the light blue. This really was pretty light, it was almost silvery. So I switched back to the blue, and this is far more teal. I like this one a lot. And then I went back to the rose red. I wanted a little bit more of that. And I used that to blend all of the colours together. And the red will only show through where there isn't any colour already. And you can see, I think you get a much stronger effect. This time I'm going to start by filling it with a little bit of clear resin. And I'm going to do it in layers again. So I'm going to put a tiny amount into the bottom, and then use my stick to gently move it around and make sure that there aren't any bubbles stuck at the bottom. Then I can cure this. And then this final layer, I've put a little bit of the chunky glitter also in a clear resin, and I'm adding that as another layer. I'll give it a stir to make sure all that glitter's got some resin on it, and then I can layer this over the surface. And we should be able to see these through from the front because I've got that clear layer in between. I'll make sure to spread this glitter out over the whole surface so that it isn't just in one clump. And then I can pop it under the lamp. Now I'm going to take the alcohol ink, and instead of mixing it in with the resin, I'm just going to drop a few drops onto the back of the pieces. And then I can use the finger of my glove to smush this in and spread it out over the surface. And because it's alcohol ink, I'm just going to leave it to dry, and it will leave the white behind. It dried really quickly, and so I'm going to give it a coat to seal it in. I'm using the same clear glitter resin that I put down for the last layer. So I don't want to waste any of the resin, and of course it's going to make the back look really pretty too. And I just have enough to seal in the alcohol ink and to top up the mould. So for the last time, it goes back under the lamp. And now I can demold. That's what I love about UV resin. It is so super speedy. So I'm going to get them both out and then I will turn over so that you can get the full effect. And these are so colourful and pretty. I think I like this method better. And because I used clear, you can see all of those flakes inside. These are going to make great pendants. And actually, that little shell that I had picked up previously, and even this one, are small enough that they could be rings or earrings. I've stuck this onto a piece of blue tack and I've put it on top of a pot because I want to give it a coat of UV resin. They are shiny, but I think they can be even shinier. I'm using an old paintbrush that I dedicate purely for this, and I do apologise for the blurring. I forgot to set the autofocus on my camera, but once I've given this a coat I will cure it, and I'll do the same for the other one, and it just gives it that added layer of shininess. Once I've finished, I will give this brush a quick rinse out with some isopropyl alcohol, and then I'll wipe it off on a paper towel and I can reuse it again. So I'll cure this. I'm going to turn a couple of them into pendants. So I have a bail and I'm using some B7000 glue to stick this onto the back. So I've put a little bit into the dip. It's kind of like a leaf shape that is slightly cupped. So I've put some of the glue in the cup, and then I'm holding the bail against the pendant to make sure that it's hidden behind it and also that it is hanging straight. I'm going to want this to hang directly down. So this glue will take 45 minutes before it is partially set. I'm not going to sit here and hold that for 45 minutes, so I'm using some UV bonding resin and I'm going to squirt a tiny bit onto my silicone mat. Then I can use a micro brush stick. I've just taken the fluffy end off. I'm going to use that to apply a bead along the edge of the bail. And in the kit you also get a UV torch, and that's what cures this instantly. Well, 10 seconds. So I'll expose that to the light for 10 seconds and that will keep the bail secured to the back of the pendant until the glue can set properly. So once the glue is set, you could just put a chain through it and that will be fine, but I like to take it a step further. And because I've got that UV resin on the top part of the back, I like just to coat the bottom part with ordinary UV resin. So I'm just going to put a blob on there and then I will spread that over the entire back. I'm holding this as level as I can by the bail and I will spread that all over the surface. It makes it look a lot neater and it gives you some added protection, keeping the bail stuck down. I'm going to use my stick to push it right to the edge, make sure the whole back is covered, and now I can use my torch to part cure this before I put it underneath the lamp. I put bails on back of 3 of them and have made them into pendants, and I have this cord necklace. You can get chain necklaces, so all I'm going to do is pass that through the bail, and then this has got a lobster clasp on it, so I'm going to hook that through. And there you go. I think that's a really pretty necklace. Make a great gift for somebody. Really good for craft fairs as well. Okay, so we've got a pendant, but you can also get these keyring findings, and all you would need is a jump ring. I've already got the bail on the back, so I'm going to pass that jump ring through the bail and then hook this through the chain, and I will pull this back together again. Always twist your jump rings away from each other, don't pull them apart. That's lined up perfectly. I like to seal mine, so I've got a little bit of super glue, and if I'm careful and try not to stick my fingers together, just find that link. There we are, and now I can just put a blob of super glue on there and that should stop that from ever coming apart. I'm just going to let that dry. But that's not the only thing you can do with them. I've also got these pin backs, so you can turn them into badges or pins. They come as 2 pieces. You've got this flat piece, which I'm going to add the glue to. Again, I'm using the super glue. Now I just need to hold this in place. Always put it towards the top of your object so that it hangs down. If you put it anywhere in the middle and it's not balanced properly, then it will hang away from your clothes. I'm just going to hold this in place until it sets. And much as I did with the pendants, I'm going to add some UV resin onto the back to make this neater and to ensure that this pin back never comes off. I'm going to actually cover the bottom plate of the pin. Again, using my stick just to bring the resin all over the surface. I'm keeping it flat in my hand. Make sure it's all covered right to the edge. And then again, I can use my torch to partially cure it, and then I'll be able to pop it under the lamp without the resin falling off. So that's curing underneath my lamp, and in the meantime I have got some magnets. I'm going to use super glue again, and I'm going to pop this onto the back of the star. I continued playing and I made a starfish. Now this was a mixture of the golden and the red, I believe, chrome powders, so you can mix the colours to get an orangey effect. Again, I'm going to place my magnet at the top of where I want it to hang. These are super strong and these pieces are very light, so I really only need these one tiny magnets. Again, I'm going to put this one at the top of the piece. Another blob of glue, and oops, that is a little bit too much. I'm just going to take that off with a paper towel. There's enough left on there, so I'll put my magnet in place and just leave that now to set. And here's the photos of the final results. I'm really happy with them. They are simply stunning, and simple is the operative word. These are really beginner friendly. They're very quick to make and the effects are stunning. The chrome powders should be part of every resin artist's arsenal. They are so easy to use and they give amazing results. I bought these myself. It's not sponsored by Let's Resin. I just really like them. And if you've liked this video and it's helpful to you, then please give me a thumbs up. Comment, share and subscribe if you haven't. It's free and you'll help my channel and you'll be able to come back and see what I make next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.